please rise. Color guard, forward march. Audience, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard, halt. Color guard, cross the colors. Color guard, post the flag of the United States of America. Post the Texas flag. Color guard on your colors. Audience, will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard, return to rank. Audience, please be seated.
Today we have a very special guest, Sergeant Courtier. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Good morning, kids. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you guys allowing me to come today and recognize our veterans and our unwavering service to America. I've noticed that you have a lot of teachers over here that are veterans, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. I also know that there's probably a good portion of your parents that are veterans that are there currently still in. By a show of hands, military. There you go. Make sure that you thank your family members for that. But also make sure that you thank not just the service members that you have, but your mom and also yourselves and your brothers and sisters. Because if it wasn't for you guys, we couldn't do what we do. It's your unwavering support and dedication and love for us that allows us to do the jobs that we do, no matter where we are or how we're doing them. Few professions leave a mark on those that make a living by it. So it's fitting that as a nation, we reserve a day for not just a person, but for a service overall. Whether you're a Marine, Navy, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, whatever it is that you choose to go into or what your parents have chosen to go into, this day is for them. We tend to think about military in our terms of stuff, right? We have these fast ships, these cool weapons, these amazing guns, but these things wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the people that stand behind and actually learn how to use those ships, learn how to use those weapon systems, and are able to support your country. So no matter what happens, we can get all this great technology, but it's for those of us who stand in uniform before you on a daily basis and fight for your great nation. While the military isn't for everyone, those who give much, they get much in return. It's a place where you can find yourself. It's a place where you can find a sense of duty and a sense of trust and honor and just friendship and family among the people that you work with. By a raise of hands, how many of you guys know exactly what it is you want to do when you get older? Well, that's a lot more than I expected. When I was in middle school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I needed to get an education and hope to make it into high school and graduate at some point in time. How many of you guys actually want to join the Army or join any branch of service? Well, good for you guys, and congratulations. For those of you who don't, that's not a bad thing either. I knew I needed to get an education at some point. I didn't know how I was going to get an education. So when I went to high school, my parents kind of pushed me towards joining the military, and I always fought against it. My parents were military, my sister's military, aunts and uncles, everybody in my family happens to be in the military. So I decided that I was going to get a full ride soccer scholarship to Florida State instead. And I did, and I loved it. And by my sophomore year, I had been injured so bad that I no longer could play. So what did I decide I wanted to do? I joined the military. I walked into the Reserve Officer Training Corps at Florida State University, the Army program. And I told them, I was like, you know, I want to do this. This is something I've been thinking about. So they let me in their program. They offered me a scholarship, and that's how I paid for the last 2 years of my college education. Well, in the beginning of my sophomore year of college, September 11th happened. And at this point, I knew that something that I was doing was going to make me a bigger part of people's lives, not just my own life, but other people's lives. And it was going to be something that was extremely scary for me. I was 20 years old at the time. I was a kid. And all I knew was that at some point in time, I was going to have to go and fight this war against terrorism. I watched friends and family go over. I watched so many things happen on the television by letters and everything else by those family members. And it was terrifying for me. But I knew that it was something that I was going to have to do. On July 7th, 2004, I finally commissioned as a second lieutenant, as an officer in the United States Army, and I got sent to multiple training areas to get my education on the missile systems and whatever else it was that I was deciding to do. While I was there, I was sent to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. How many of you guys know where that's at? All right. I was there for about 6 years, and during that time, I held multiple positions. But the one position I remember holding is I was a platoon leader, and I had 20 soldiers underneath me at this point in time. And these soldiers, half of them were my age, some of them were younger, but I knew that I was going to have to take care of them. But I knew that they were going to have to take care of me too. And these soldiers started to become my second family. They were my home. I was away from my parents, I was away from my sister, but these soldiers were my home at that point in time. And although we were still sleeping in our own bed, and we were still in the United States and not in some foreign country, we did everything that we could to make ourselves better and to make each other better. And that's one of the things that you guys need to think about too. Your friends that you make in middle school, your friends that you make in high school, and even the friends from elementary school, those students, those kids, those friends of yours are going to be part of your family for a good portion of your life. And those people that raised their hand and said they wanted to join the military, it may be a very, very large service, regardless of which one you want to go into, but you'll run into them again. So make sure that you keep those people around you close and you take care of the people around you. So I talk about all this not to tell you just about my career and the things I've done or to sell you on the military in any way, shape, or form. I talk about this to see what this Veterans Day holiday is really about, because a lot of people tend to forget what it is. It's to honor those who have served or who are serving or maybe who gave that ultimate sacrifice and are still not here, right? So when you see a veteran, and not just on a day like this, but any day, your teachers especially, because they're here making you better and giving you an education for what you need for your future. So thank them. And make sure that you let them know that you appreciate what it is that they have done. Without the camaraderie and the family type mentality, this nation wouldn't be what it is today. We wouldn't be what we are today. The bond between those that have served is not one that's easily matched. And when you go and you meet those people, you have this family type bond that I talked about before. The men and women of our armed forces raise their right hand to take an oath. All of these guys here have done it, I've done it, and I'm sure multiple other people in here have done it as well. That oath asks us to defend this great nation in both at times of peace and at times of war. And although currently we're at war, hopefully we will be at peace soon, so that maybe in your guys' near future you won't have to do the types of things that we've had to do. This is something amazing to me though, because it's courage. It's a courage to know that sometimes and maybe someday we may find ourselves in a far off land and doing something that we didn't ever think that we were going to be doing. And that's something that you guys need to think about too. You may not think right now that you could be in a far off land, but time only tells. Some say our country doesn't need to be involved in these different types of world affairs. Some say that we just need to turn a blind eye. But if we turn a blind eye to what's going on, how long does it take till we find these problems in our own backyard? Till you guys are growing up when you get older and having terrorism in your own backyard and seeing what's happening. So it is our duty and it is our responsibility to try to stop this now. It's always been our responsibility. For those veterans that have served in the past, my heart goes out to you guys, and I appreciate everything that it is that you're doing. For those veterans that are still serving, my heart goes out to you as well, because it's a tough time at this point. For those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, my heart extremely goes out to those, and those family members that are still dealing with that loss and that pain. And I appreciate everything it is that you guys have done. This life though isn't for everybody. It's hard to be in the military, even for those most seasoned veterans that we have, because we are leaving life behind as we know it when we have to go off to these other nations. We don't get to call in sick. We don't just get to quit and we don't get to walk away. And that's something that's instilled in us from the beginning. And that's something that should be instilled in you guys starting now. You guys should never want to quit or give up. You have so much part of your lives ahead of you that you need to continue fighting for it. I know that as a mother, I have a 2-year-old son right now, and I'm still serving. And as a mother, it tears my heart apart to know that there may be a day that I'm called back into service and I have to go overseas. And although it's going to be the hardest thing I do, I will still do it. And I know that your family members, and I know any one of these guys, if they got called up, they would have to do the same thing. And as painful as that's going to be, that's what we signed up for, and that's what we gave that oath for. So, don't think that just because you aren't joining the military, you don't want to join the military at some point in time in your life, that you're not doing something great for your nation, because you guys are doing something just as great, just in a different manner. So make sure that you realize that as well. But in closing, I would just like to say thank you again for letting me being able to share this opportunity with you of what a veteran is, and telling you, the hardships that we go through, and also giving thanks and praise to your veterans here and your family members and service members at home. To share what it's like to be a leader, a soldier, and a mother in the Army is something very, very hard for me to do, but I love doing it because it's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life. But Tonight, when you lay down to say a little prayer for your military men and women, make sure that you're saying one for their families. Because just as you are sending that prayer to them, there's thousands of families that are sending that prayer to their family members, their loved ones, their mothers, fathers, husbands, brothers, whatever it is, to come home safely and return back to their family. So thank you, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Introducing all of the teachers that served in the Army that are now teachers at our school. Mr. Bonda was a sergeant. He was in charge of 30 to 40 men under him. He served 29 years. He was also in charge of making sure that the soldiers had enough food, ammunition, and guns to fight. Mr. Bounds. Mr. Bounds served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps. He was an infantry officer, which means he fought in the wars. He was in charge of leading 34 to 200 men into combat. Mr. Cacciatore. Mr. Cacciatore served 11 years as a U.S. Navy corpsman and a U.S. Coast Guard. Mr. Nugent served 6 years in the Army and 3 years in the Army Reserves. He also was in charge of writing a letter to family when a person's loved one had passed away and had to give it to the journal. He was also in charge of retirement for the soldiers. Miss Sides. Miss Sides served 8 years and was a sergeant for the military. Mr. Kowarski. Mr. Kowarski was in the U.S. Army for 10 years. He went to Germany, Egypt, Iraq, Panama, and Berlin Wall. He was also a sergeant and was also in the Honor and Selfless Service. Mr. Crellin. Mr. Crellin retired as a chief hospital corpsman, United States Navy, after almost 25 years of service, 1977 to
to 2002. A hospital corpsman assists healthcare professionals in providing medical care to Navy and Marine Corps personnel and their families. He also served as a battlefield corpsman with the Marine Corps. For the performance of his duties, Mr. Crown was awarded the Navy Commendation Medal and 3 Navy Achievement Medals for meritorious service. Please give a round of applause to these.
teachers, guests, and students. My name is Mariah, and I'll be introducing our next guest speaker. Martin Kazula graduated near the top of the West Point class and entered the Army as an engineer officer in 1991. Mr. Cazillo served 6 years in a variety of assignments as well as executive assignment to a Corps of Engineers Division Commanding General. At this time, Mr. Cazillo cultivated leadership fundamentals that are now instinctive in his professional life. Following his service, Mr. Cazillo joined the General Electric and earned a Six Sigma Black Belt certification through activities that involve training, advising, working alongside suppliers around the globe. After 3 years of GE, Mr. Cazillo joined Dell Financial Services in Austin, Texas, and more than 10 years at Dell. He gained a lot of experience uncommon in Fortune 500 company. Taking on responsibilities similar to this of a general manager, he delivered the world's 6th most powerful computer at the Texas Advanced Computing Center and validated that achievement by delivering over $500 million of custom data center solutions across 5 continents in less than a year. While earning a technical undergraduate degree, Mr. Cazillo pursued collegiate experiences that stretched his perspective and sharpened his understanding of global business. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy through an annual exchange program that selects only 6 out of more than 1,000 cadets and earned a master's degree in engineering management from the University of Missouri-Rolla. Mr. Cazillo and his wife, married for 22 years, enjoy setting examples for the 2 high school-age children through community service. They have mentored an underprivileged student through high school, graduation, college, and beyond. So please join me in a big round of applause for Mr. Martin Cazillo.
First of all, good morning. I would like to thank Captain Tourier for her wonderful and heartfelt comments. I'd like to give her another round of applause. Can you hear me all right? So, first of all, I'd like to share with you that I have a couple of students, my children, who are just a little bit older than you. One very much interested in music, the other one very much interested in sports. And one thing that I have a tremendous amount of pride in is the way that they respect and appreciate the hard work, enduring hardships, and even the sacrifices that each other makes as they pursue each of their interests. One achieving 4th place overall their band in the nation, and the other actually intercepting 3 passes in a single game. And as they achieve those things, each one respects the hard work that went into it. And why I say that is that is the foundation for service. It's the hard work, the hardships, and even in making sacrifices. And I learned those things when I went to 4 years of military school to prepare me for service and to be in the Army. I learned from my very first salute to my last salute. The first salute was not my finest moment. I went in to sign in with the first sergeant, and I saluted. My hand was real shaky, and then he told me, "Cazillo, pick up the pen in your right hand and sign in." Well, I started signing in, and I was signing, and it was taking me forever. I think I made it through 3 letters of my first name when he stopped me, and he said, "Cazillo, what's going on?" And I stood at attention, and I told him, I said, "First Sergeant, you told me to pick up the pen in my right hand, but I'm left-handed." And he responded right away. He said, "Cuzzillo," I said, "pick up a pen in your writing hand." And so it was through that experience, learning a little bit about hardship that was far from, what a lot of people endure in the Army, but I was just starting. A little bit later, I had a chance to use that same salute as the upperclassmen were coming back from their summer training. And it feels a lot, or felt a lot like, as you might have some exposure to the Harry Potter story in Hogwarts as everybody returns to school. It felt a lot like that as all the upperclassmen were returning, all except for one. You see, one of the upperclassmen was attending Arctic training in Alaska, learning how to scale alpine terrain, learning how to cover glaciers when he fell into a crevasse and they could not rescue him. So I had a chance to use my salute again. It was a clear, crisp night. We were standing on the same parade grounds that George Washington often walked across, as we rendered a salute in honor to this cadet who gave his life as they played taps. It was a few years later before I had a chance to use my final salute before graduating. This salute almost didn't happen. You see, all the cadets marched up to the stadium, getting ready for the guest speaker and for graduation. And a handful of us, the top of our class, were able to march up by ourselves. So after we gave them about a 10-minute head start, then decided it was time to get ready. And I went to go grab my white starch pants that were about as firm as cardboard. And I went to pull it on to the first leg, right leg, and I made it up to about my knee when I realized they gave me the wrong laundry. And it was a mad scramble as I went up floor after floor looking for any pair of white pants, opened wardrobe after wardrobe, and they were empty. I was in sheer panic that I might not even make it to my own graduation. And as I'm running around up and down and learning a little bit of what this is to endure a hardship, although very minor, I finally kept my cool, found somebody in a different building who was about my same size, who was on guard duty, was able to get a pair of white pants, make it up to the stadium, and walk across the stage to use that final salute to the 41st President of the United States, George Bush. As I shook his hand and he handed me my diploma, I learned that there was a lot of hard work and hardship that went into preparing me to join the Army. But you see, I knew there was a lot more that I had to learn. And it goes back to a time when I was in the 8th grade. I brought something special with me today, something that I worked on when I was in the 8th grade. Here it is. It's about 30 plus years old. To you, that seems pretty old. To me, it just seems like yesterday. You see, in the springtime of my 8th grade year, we had an assignment to write on World War II. And I had done almost all the work. In fact, I believed it was all the work. My father suggested I talk to an old man in a town who had been in World War II. And I was reluctant to do any more work than I had to. But finally I acquiesced, and myself and a good friend of mine, we went down to interview this gentleman. He was a fascinating man. He was a coordinator of our rec leagues, handling baseball and basketball, and he had his office at the local civic center. We sat in his office, but he was hard to hear. He spoke in a very raspy voice, and we had to lean forward in our chairs to listen closely. And I'm not sure at what point, as he was talking, that it dawned on me that this man, he was something special. You see, he had won the Purple Heart, commendation for being injured in battle. He won the Purple Heart 7 times. He won the Bronze Star 3 times. He won the Legion of Merit 1 time. He won the Silver Star twice. He won recognition from other countries, from Belgium, from France. And ultimately, he won the Medal of Honor, the highest honor for valor in our country. And I was sitting in front of him with my friend, listening as he told story after story. And what really struck me was that he told these stories not bragging, but sharing with them that they were just part of his duty, part of his service, part of the sacrifice that he made. And that's where I really knew that I had a lot to learn later on in life. And to do it justice, the only way that I can read what is now in the last couple of pages of my World War II report is to read from his Medal of Honor citation and what he achieved, and yet he was sitting in front of us, a regular guy, talking to two 8th grade students about World War II, about service. On June 14th, enemy tanks were unmercifully raking his unit's positions and inflicting heavy casualties. Captain Irvin, realizing that his company was in imminent danger of being decimated, armed himself with a bazooka. He worked his way through hedgerows under a continuing barrage of fire to a point near the tanks. He brazenly exposed himself to enemy fire and, firing the bazooka, destroyed both tanks. Responding to his action, his company moved forward and routed the enemy. Later the same day, he was wounded in the leg by direct fire from a 37mm tank gun. He refused evacuation and continued to lead his company until they moved into defensive positions for the night. At 5 a.m. the next morning, though badly wounded, he directed his company into another attack. 1 hour later, he was again wounded, and he was evacuated this time to England. In mid-July, he learned of his unit's severe losses in the hedgerows of Normandy. He voluntarily left the hospital and hitchhiked his way back to his unit near St. Lo, France. He found his company held up by strong enemy opposition. 2 tanks had been destroyed and another, intact, but with no tank commander or gunner, was not moving. He located a lieutenant in charge of the support tanks and directed a plan of attack to eliminate the enemy strong point. The lieutenant and sergeant that he directed were immediately killed by the heavy enemy fire when they tried to mount the tank. Captain Irvin, though physically hampered by his leg wound, dashed through the scathing fire and mounted the tank. With enemy bullets ricocheting from the tank, he ordered the tank forward and, completely exposed to the enemy fire, manned the machine gun and placed devastating fire on the enemy. His action galvanized the battalion into action, and they attacked and destroyed the enemy position. On August 2nd, he was wounded in the chest by shell fragments. Disregarding the recommendation of the battalion surgeon, again he refused evacuation. Finally, on September the 3rd, he was given the mission to establish a crossing point on the Meuse River in Belgium. The enemy concentrated heavy forces at the Meuse with fierce artillery, small arms, and mortar fire to stop the attack. Captain Irvin moved his command post to the lead position of the battalion, reorganized the attacking elements, and he personally led a charge toward the enemy's strong point. He was seriously wounded in the neck, unable to talk above a whisper from the paralyzing neck wound, and in danger of losing his life. He refused to be evacuated until the enemy was routed and his battalion had secured the crossing point on the Meuse River. I heard these things from this gentleman who was the second most decorated soldier in U.S. history, and listened to him as he modestly talked about his service. And I think there's a lot of soldiers out there, although not given that opportunity, they have that pride, they're willing to make those sacrifices. One thing I did learn is that it's not just about the old, and it's not just about history, but it's about the young, and it's about today in terms of sacrifices. If you grant me a little bit of liberty, I'm going to read from Dr. Seuss. See, there's nothing remarkable about a 9-year-old girl, Hannah, reading to her dad. As she reads, Some have 2 feet and some have 4. Some have 6 feet and some have more. Except that she's reading to her father to teach him how to read. Where do they come from? I can't say. But I bet they have come a long, long way. And you ask yourself, well, didn't he know how to read? Of course he did. He knew how to read before Baghdad, before the mortar attack, before shrapnel ripped into his brain. You see, he and I, along with 900 of our friends, knew how to read when we stepped across the stage and received a diploma from the 41st President of the United States. We knew how to read before we entered the Army and knew that we were facing a career of service, of sacrifice. So how does that all tie back to you? I saw a lot of show of hands out there of those who were considering serving in the military. And maybe it would help just to give you an idea of how many people are out there in active duty and in the reserves today. Last I saw, and maybe I have my numbers a little bit wrong, there were 1,400 students here in the school. Just using that for an example. If we were to pick captains like you pick in team sports or in a project, where I ask one of you to step up and then another person to step up, and then each of you turn around and you start picking people for teams. Well, if we were to take everybody in the school and line you up shoulder to shoulder, and then have you start picking teams in which you were picking from the active duty and from the reserves, and you were able to pick one person every second, it would take you 26 days to pick everybody from the active duty and reserve component. The line behind each of you would stretch almost a mile. There would be 1,542 for each of your teams. But that's just active duty. That's just the reserves. If we were to expand that and add to your teams all of those who are veterans alive today, you would be picking those teams for 252 days, one person every second. The line behind each of you would stretch from here to Mighty Fine and back to Hopewell and back to Mighty Fine again, 8.6 miles. Each of you would have a team of over 15,000 people. So I think the final message is that no matter what your interests are, whether it be baseball or literature, art or music, that all of you have the ability, whether young or old, to recognize the hard work, the hardships, and even the sacrifices that others make. And it's not just the soldiers, the sailors, the Marines, the Coast Guardsmen, but it's their families as well. And when you see a veteran, the best thing that you can do is to offer them a sincere and heartfelt thank you for your service. Thank you.
Hey Hornets, before I begin, can I please have every veteran in the audience stand up? Okay, I'm here to announce the following essay winners, but beforehand, can I get a show of hands of everyone who participated in the writing of the essay? Okay, I'm gonna announce them from third place to first place. Third place, Catalina Mason. Oh, can you come up to the stand, please? Okay, our second place winner is Brian Lopez. Last but not least, Beatrice Tianga. All right, thank you. Okay, now I would like if our guest speakers could stand up, please. Thank you, guys.
I would like to say thank you for all of you who came, and I would especially like to thank our Fine Arts Department, Mr. Crawford, Ms. Kosh, Mr. Preston, and Mrs. Ansky. You guys made this assembly spectacular, and I'm very proud to be here today. Now you will all join me in song.